Here, read this.
Woof.
So I want to talk to you about a film called The Substance, which I've recently watched. Came out last year. Stars Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, and it's directed by a French filmmaker called Coralie Fargeat. First film of hers I've seen. Really fun, really gross, very silly. If you're into sort of Cronenberg body horror, or maybe like John Carpenter actually is a closer fit, it might be right up your disgusting little alley. But one thing that really stood out to me about it was that it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde movie. And so in this video, I just wanted to go through the movie and point out the connections between it and Jekyll and Hyde. This will sort of take us a little bit into spoiler territory. So if you want to watch The Substance and you haven't yet, I'd recommend not watching this before you do so. So just to set the movie up a little bit, Demi Moore plays an aging actress called Elizabeth Sparkle, an Oscar winner who now in her 50s is starring in a Dancercise video. But she is getting a little bit too old and haggish even for that, according to her repulsive producer, played by Dennis Quaid, and she is given a golden handshake. Now, I saw a trailer for this movie, and I thought it was like a de-aging movie, like you inject yourself with a substance, and then you become a younger version of yourself. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that, and it's one of the things that makes it quite different to Jekyll and Hyde. We'll come back to this again. There's two people. It's not two personalities sharing one body. There are actually two bodies. So Demi Moore, Elizabeth Sparkle, takes the substance and then horrifically births her younger self out of her back. I can't really describe that scene. You have to watch it to get the full impact. But out of her back emerges Margaret Qualley's character, who gives herself the name of Sue. And then the two of them have to sort of work out a way of cohabiting, a very unique way. There is a golden rule with the substance, according to the mysterious voice on the phone. The golden rule is that you have to swap weeks. So your younger self gets 1 week doing whatever they want to do, then they have to come home, injects the older self who has been comatose for this week and swap places, and vice versa. So that's kind of the setup. The first connection to Jekyll and Hyde that I want to talk to involves the whole mechanics of this weird setup. The titular substance itself is a sort of green liquid. It looks exactly like what you'd expect in a film version of Jekyll's laboratory. The visual sort of storytelling in The Substance is extremely corny. It opens with a shot of Demi Moore's Hollywood star, which gets tomato ketchup spilt on it, cracks forming on it. When she's feeling cast aside by her producers, she's driving along and sees a billboard of her own face being ripped down. It's kind of like visual imagery you'd expect of a music video. But that's completely in keeping with this sort of schlocky fun that the movie has. It's not bothered about being subtle, and it's not bothered about being remotely realistic. But anyway, back to the mechanics of the transformation and the connections to Jekyll and Hyde. So we've got bright green substance that looks like it is something from Jekyll's laboratory. Then we have the period of convalescence. So Demi Moore, when Margaret Qualley takes over, is basically, well, first of all, she looks dead. Her eyes are open, but she's basically in a comatose state. She's in a state of suspended animation, abeyance, which is very much like how Jekyll describes his state when Hyde is active. Although they're sharing a body, unlike Sue and Elizabeth Sparkle, Jekyll describes himself as sort of semi-conscious, relegated to the primacy of Hyde, whilst Hyde is active. It might be Jekyll being a little bit foxy about his own involvement in Hyde's misdeeds, but that's the language he uses. And then the final thing on the mechanics of what's involved with acquiring and using the substance is that it entails or it asks of Elizabeth Sparkle to make a trip to the seedier side of town. Much like Jekyll having to have a Soho flat and dirtying his name by his association with Hyde. Remember, earlier on in the novel, people assume that Hyde is a disreputable friend of Jekyll's, not his alter ego. Similarly, in order to acquire the substance, and then in order to acquire the refills, because you have to keep collecting your week's supply of the substance and all of the related, there's some food chemicals that you have to have as well. Elizabeth Sparkle, who's a very well-off actress, you know, her star is on the wane, but she lives in a massive penthouse. She's obviously well off. She has to make a trip to a rather dingier side of LA. So I thought it was quite notable that both Jekyll and Sparkle have to travel across class lines in order to pursue this transformation. Point number 2 is youth. The substance is obsessed with youth and aging. Demi Moore feels kicked out of Hollywood because she's too old. She's become like an invisible woman. Let's not confuse our horror franchises here for a second. And so she wants a younger body and enter Sue. And similarly, Dr. Jekyll's alter ego, Hyde, is a younger man, a more virile man. He gets to relive some of the excitement of youth that he feels like he was denied. Of course, there's a lot of smoke about what he's actually getting up to as Hyde, but we know that a kind of youthful energy is associated that's irresistible to Jekyll. And so it's not just a question of age, but propriety as well. Jekyll is a well-respected Victorian gentleman who has to go to extreme lengths to find a way of letting his hair down. Similarly, even though in a vastly different context, Demi Moore, as a 50-year-old actress in Hollywood, can't behave the way that she feels is true to her and is owed to her. Now, what seems radically different about why Sparkle and Jekyll put themselves through this transformation is that Jekyll takes a transforming potion in order to do something transformatively different to what he'd usually be doing. Whatever it is he gets up to as Hyde, whatever deep, dark, mysterious pleasures he's pursuing, they're not what he is pursuing in his respectable Jekyll persona. By contrast, when Sparkle creates a younger self by extreme measures, that younger self goes and takes her old job. So she continues to do what Sparkle was doing that we're never quite sure if she enjoys. And we get the impression that the reason that Sparkle is doing a Dancercise channel is because she's a formerly famous actress who is on the wane, right? She's an Oscar winner. She was doing movies and things that are a lot more glamorous than, Pump It Up. And so point number 3 is ambiguous motives. We don't quite know what Sparkle is getting out of this arrangement, and the arrangement is grueling. Sparkle seems to be going through a hell of a lot for very little. And similarly with Dr. Jekyll, although we can see the contrast between Jekyll and Hyde, obviously, we don't quite know what he's getting up to. We don't quite know what his deal is. And that has led, obviously, to lots of theories being put forward. Is Jekyll secretly homosexual? Is it a story about alcohol? Is it a Jack the Ripper type story? Although it obviously predated Jack the Ripper. I think it's kind of the strength of both stories, to be honest, that they both have room for lots of interpretations. Watching The Substance with its weird parallel Hollywood that shrunk around a nexus of a network TV channel and a big New Year's Eve show. Lots of very antique phrases like, I saw you on TV. Even the sexism feels a little bit outdated. You might expect some sort of Weinstein-type behavior, and Dennis Quaid's character is certainly repellent enough that you kind of expect that of him. But they don't really go there, and I think it's quite a good move because it deals so strongly with the violence of cultural expectations of women, of actresses, but you don't really need to add an actual scene of an assault or something. There's plenty of violence enough, and it all happens in private. It all happens in Elizabeth Sparkle's bathroom, where the two of them are splashing around with the substance and bucket loads of blood. I think that's one of the things that makes the movie a lot of fun, is you can watch it thinking, is this a straightforward parable of the horrific dehumanizing effect of Hollywood on actresses? Is it a parable to do with social media and curating a public image? So you have the one that you send out into the world that you work around whilst your real self sort of rots in the gloom? Or given the extensive body horror and lots of private reckonings in bathroom mirrors with growths and blood and all that kind of stuff, and also given the fact that The Substance builds in this alternate weeks gimmick, is it a body horror story about the denied realities of the female body? So when Sue lands this big New Year's Eve gig, she has to mentally calculate, wait, is that going to be one of my weeks? Or is that going to be one of Sparkle's weeks? Whilst Dennis Quaid just sort of gawps at her quizzically. Kind of patriarchal blindness to the realities of a woman's menstrual cycle seem to be at play there. But like I say, I don't think it lands on one particular one heavier than any of the others, and I really like that in a movie. Okay, so point number 4 is a parental relationship with the younger created self. Jekyll says of Hyde that he feels a little bit like a father towards him. He says of Hyde that Hyde had a son's indifference to Jekyll. When Sparkle wakes up after a week asleep on the bathroom tiles, she is confronted with the debris of Sue's hedonism. It's also up to Sparkle to go and collect the substance so they can continue their arrangement. So we get the impression that far from enjoying herself, she's actually turned into a bit of a curator for someone else's fun. The young self, Sue, is literally feeding off Elizabeth Sparkle. So rather than the standard Hollywood conspiracy of the old vampirically feasting off the young, the tables are turned. And Jekyll finds himself in a similar predicament. His health is depleted by the exploits of Hyde. He has to cough up money to buy him out of trouble. He loses his friends, and he eventually loses his life. Finally, number 5, Elizabeth and Sue are repeatedly reminded by the mysterious voice of the substance on the phone that they are not separate personalities, they are one. Recalling G.K. Chesterton's elegant summation of Jekyll and Hyde, in which he said, the real stab of the story is not that the one man is two men, but that the two men are one man. Neither Elizabeth nor Sue can quite believe that they are the same person. They both get annoyed at how the other one has behaved on their weeks. And I think more so than Jekyll and Hyde, it's hard for us as an audience to believe that these two people are one person. And that's, I think, the cleverest thing about the film, is it exposes our shallowness. In Jekyll and Hyde, we see one man turn into another man. One man's body become another man's body. And that allows us to believe that this is a split personality, not two different people. The substance isn't as clean as that. When Margaret Qualley is out enjoying herself, we keep cutting back to the glaze-eyed Demi Moore, sort of asleep, sort of comatose in the bathroom closet. But the voice on the end of the phone, which we have to take as an authority, is adamant that this is the same personality. Every time we hear that, and it happens a number of times throughout the movie, it's a reminder that, like Hollywood, we can find it very hard to see past bodily reality. So there you have it, a Jekyll and Hydean reading of The Substance. Let me know if you've seen the movie and what you made of it, if so, and until next time, happy reading.